NYPD Commissioner blasts Manhattan DA's lenient agenda in letter to NYPD officers. NYPD Commissioner Keishant Sewell sent an email to cops on Friday saying she's concerned for their safety in light of the progressive policies announced this week by the new Manhattan District Attorney that some see as soft on crime. I have studied these policies, and I am very concerned about the implications to your safety as police officers, the safety of the public, and justice for the victims, Sewell wrote in an email obtained by the Post. I am making my concerns known to the Manhattan District Attorney and hope to have a frank, productive discussion and try to reach a more common ground. District Attorney Alvin Bragg, in his first memo issued Monday, instructed his staff to stop prosecuting many low-level offenses, to seek reduced charges for certain crimes, and not to ask for bail except in most serious cases.
With just days on the job, Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg is changing how some crimes will be prosecuted. It fulfills a campaign promise Bragg says is informed by his upbringing in Harlem and personal experiences, both confronting and upholding the law.
Having had an automatic weapon to my head, a knife to my throat, I wanted to give voice to the people who know those experiences and to give context to those who don't.
In a memo to staff, offenses like marijuana misdemeanors, prostitution, and fare evasion will no longer be prosecuted. Bragg says the changes will allow attorneys more time to prosecute violent offenses.
A tragic case of Khalif Browder, who took his own life nearly a year ago on June 6, 2015. At the time of his death, Khalif was a 22-year-old New York student who spent 3 years at Rikers Island Jail without being convicted of a crime. In 2010, when he was just 16, he was sent to Rikers Island without trial on suspicion of stealing a backpack. He spent the next nearly 3 years at Rikers, even though he was never tried or convicted. For nearly 800 days of that time, he was held in solitary confinement. Khalif always maintained his innocence, requesting a trial, but was only offered plea deals while the trial was repeatedly delayed. Near the end of his time in jail, the judge offered to sentence him to time served if he entered a guilty plea and told him he could face 15 years in prison if he went to trial and was convicted. Khalif still refused to accept the plea deal. He was only released when the case was dismissed.
This is why Mr. Bragg, District Attorney Bragg, wants to stop incarcerating people for low-level offenses. This boy was in jail for allegedly stealing a backpack, which we all know it came out he never did it. So he's in there for no reason, and this is the kind of abuse that he is enduring for no reason, because the staff is backed up. They cannot have a speedy trial. They keep trying to make this boy plea out to something that he didn't do. So now they have him, someone who's suspected of stealing a book bag, in with hardened criminals and other people suspected of stealing backpacks. This is why DA Bragg does not want to incarcerate people at this level.
Obviously, there's going to be a government response, but for fare evasion, it's not going to be incarceration, not in Manhattan. I had a shootout on my block a month ago. We need to be focused on that.
The new guidelines are framed by principles including investing more in programs to keep offenders out of jail, reducing the pretrial jail population, limiting the number of youth tried as adults, and providing more programs to those returning home after incarceration.
I have not communicated with the DA. I have not looked over and analyzed exactly what he's calling for.
But on the campaign trail, Mayor Adams advocated for both more services and also higher bail and incarceration for offenders. Higher bail and incarceration for offenders. Higher bail and incarceration for offenders. Adams says he hopes to convene a meeting with lawmakers, DAs, and law enforcement.
We want everyone to get in the room and operate off the same playbook, the same playbook, the same playbook. We can have the justice we deserve with the public safety we need.
Sewell, who also recently started in her role after being appointed by new Mayor Eric Adams, said the progressive approach will erode the quality of life in the city and sends a message to police officers that they are not protected. Her message diverges from that of Adams, who has stood by Bragg amid outrage over his approach. You see that? You see how they sitting there acting like, oh, one is against the other, but Adams is her boss. He appointed her. Asked on Wednesday about the DA's policy not to go after smaller offenses, Adams told reporters, I know DA Bragg. I respect him. He's a great prosecutor. In her email to all uniformed members of the department, Sewell said that she had already raised some issues with Bragg, including his refusal to prosecute resisting arrest charges unless they are part of a larger felony case. That decision will invite violence against police officers and will have deleterious effects on our relationship with the communities we protect, Sewell wrote. The top cop also raised concerns about the new policies downgrading felonies to misdemeanors in certain cases. For instance, Bragg's memo states that suspects initially charged with armed robbery of a store would get hit with petty larceny, instead misdemeanor, provided no victims were seriously injured and there was no genuine risk of physical harm. The DA's office clarified on Wednesday that it would still prosecute armed robberies involving a gun as a felony. Sewell said that classifying gunpoint robberies in a business as misdemeanors instead of felonies endanger cops and is bad for business owners who are reeling from increased theft. Commercial establishments have endured much during this pandemic, and city government should do whatever it can to ensure they participate and thrive in the city's ongoing recovery effort, she wrote. Downgrading drug dealing charges will invite more open-air drug markets and drug use in Manhattan and lead to more gun violence as dealers beef over territory, she argued. Bragg's policies will exacerbate the quality of life concerns, which have surged 59% since 2019 based on complaints to 311, Sewell claimed, not 911. The new charging policies of the Manhattan District Attorney effectively decriminalizes much of the conduct that New Yorkers are asking the police to address, the top cop wrote. No, New Yorkers flooded the streets in protest and asking for defunding of the police. Not what you're talking about, Ms. Sewell. Sewell also raised concerns over Bragg's stated aim to significantly reduce pretrial detention, reserving it only for very serious cases. In addition to gun possession, I am concerned that pretrial incarceration will no longer be sought for charges such as terrorism, criminal sale of a firearm, gunpoint robberies, and other serious violent felonies that put the safety of the public and police officers who have sworn to protect and serve at great risk, she wrote. First of all, that makes no sense because it clearly states in the paragraph above that he would reserve it only for very serious cases. Terrorism, criminal sale of a firearm, and gunpoint robberies would be included in very serious cases, Ms. Sewell. Sewell told members of the nation's largest police department she believes in criminal justice reform, but argued that the NYPD has already been helping to reduce incarceration and arrest by pursuing community-based solutions. Crime was going down during the Trump administration. It has nothing to do with your community-based solutions. I believe in reform that makes sense when applied collaboratively, Sewell told cops. In that same vein, I'm concerned about sweeping edicts that seem to remove discretion, not just from police officers, but also from assistant district attorneys regarding what crimes to prosecute and how to charge them. The commissioner said she would be seeking to speak with Bragg further to seek a better balance between the officer safety, public safety, and reform. But in the meantime, it instructed cops to do your jobs based on your training, direction by supervisor, and enforce the law. While some public defenders, including the Legal Aid Society, welcomed Bragg's changes, police union leaders have warned the policies would only lead to more crime. The head of the NYPD's largest union, the Police Benevolent Association, also expressed serious concerns about the message these types of policies send to both police officers and criminals on the street. Police officers don't want to be sent out to enforce laws that the district attorneys won't prosecute, PBA President Patrick Lynch said. So you mean to tell me she's on the same side as Patrick Lynch?
The message here is not to be aggressive. Now, if we're dealing with an ordinary citizen that's having a problem, absolutely. There is no need for aggression. When you're dealing with a mope trying to dump water over your head, or worse, you have to go in seriously and give that message. We cannot look at it as an isolated situation. So it's easy to take this legislation and say, well, why would we do that? Let's look at all the other pieces of legislation that have passed that soften the police department to a point where we're not effective on the street. They're asking police officers just to walk away and take it. Well, I'm a kid from Queens. In your neighborhood, would you just walk away and take it when someone dumped a bucket of water on your head? Or would you call the police? So now you call the police. Should we just walk away and take it? If the politicians that say it's okay, that say we shouldn't have this legislation, had a bucket of water dumped over their head, what would they do? I have the answer. They would call their connections. They'd call the brass in the NYPD. And you know what they'd get? They'd get a response. They'd expect a response. Well, the kids from Queens, the cops in all our boroughs, we expect a response too. Common sense says you don't dump a bucket of anything on a police officer responding to an emergency call. And I say this, how dare you expect New York City police officers to accept what you won't accept? We're out there doing a job. We do it well. We are the most restrained police department in the country. That's not just a throwaway line, that's a fact.
The young mother wrestled to the ground and arrested by New York cops last week for not wearing a mask apparently has changed city and police procedures. Cops will no longer be allowed to arrest people simply for not wearing masks. This is the NYPD tonight under criticism about two incidents at subway stations in Brooklyn that critics say went too far. In one case, a teenager punched by a police officer. The other, a packed subway car, was held at gunpoint.
The NYPD is investigating after video appears to show an officer with his knee on a man's neck during an arrest. CBS 2's Allie Bauman reports from Jamaica, Queens.
Look at his knee! Look at his knee!
We know how to do our job, so we need to have a dialogue. Remember, a dialogue goes both directions. Both directions. We're the most restrained. We're the best trained. We know how to do our job. We know the street. So let's start the dialogue. And the dialogue should be, officer, is this okay? Absolutely not. Because if you go to the scene from a position of weakness, it only escalates. If you go to the scene from a position of strength, with backing from City Hall, backing from the law, backing from the community, the job will get done.
In a statement to the Post Saturday, Bragg said safety is paramount in our office, and a discussion with police had already started and was best done not through the media. We share Commissioner Sewell's call for frank and productive discussions to reach common ground on our shared mission to deliver safety and justice for all, and look forward to the opportunity to clear up some misunderstandings, he said.